back to another amazing episode of Crusty Car News, where it's especially slimy, greasy, and crusty today, where we have 5 absolutely mind-blowing stories for you today. Hot off the press, Ford's huge announcement absolutely has Ram, Chevy, GM, and even Toyota quaking in their boots. The second story, why rich people drive junky cars and poor people drive luxury cars. The third story, if you haven't already heard and you've been hiding in a closet, the tariffs and how they've absolutely decimated the car market. And the fourth story, Toyota's huge announcement, absolutely mind-blowing. And the fifth story, how car buyers have expressed how they absolutely hate buying cars and the dealership experience. So go ahead, sit back, grab your junk, grab your favorite beverage, and hold on for the ride. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first story, Ford's huge announcement has GM, Chevy, Toyota, and the rest of them quaking in their boots. That's right, in the light of some of these recent tariffs, Ford has announced some huge discounts available to almost every single buyer today.
As you see, the inventory is pretty strong these days. We've seen a whole new fleet of 24s and 25s still on the lot here. A lot incoming, just came off the truck. A lot of F-Series medium-size or light-duty pickup trucks like the F-150s in all shapes and sizes. But we're seeing some vehicles here that we haven't seen some for a while. We're seeing a lot of these vehicles like the Mavericks. You know, about a year ago, you couldn't get a Maverick. Mavericks were hard to come by. The hybrids, people loved a cost-effective vehicle. And a lot of these trucks were, in fact, supposed to be starting in the $20,000 range. But now, would you believe it, Ford has announced some absolutely huge news, which is going to be a devastating blow to some of their competition in Chevy and Stellantis. Now, Ford's been trying to reinvent themselves for some time, and we heard months ago that the CEO Farley has announced that they want to bring fun back into the brand. Well, fun exists in certain models, and we know that. I mean, full-size Super Duty trucks aren't necessarily known as fun, they do the work. But cars like the Ford Mustang, the GTs, we've seen this beautiful 5-liter Mustang. Here's another one. These vehicles are in fact fun, but they're not selling. Why is that? Well, let's take a look over here. And would you look at this, $72,000 for this Mustang GT. I mean, these Mustangs have always been a lot of fun, and they've been essentially the boy next door car. The car that the middle class can often afford. But I'll be honest, at $72,000 for this beautiful little Mustang in this wonderful gray, that truly leaves a lot of the middle class wondering, how did they get so expensive? Of course, they've created vehicles that are more cost effective. The Bronco Sport, even though it's basically built in Mexico or built in other countries and not necessarily the staple of the best of their brand, it does offer an opportunity for a lot of customers to be able to get into something with the Bronco badging. Even though it's not a hardcore, it's certainly a stripped out version, it does represent an opportunity to get into something like that. But as well, naturally, we talked about the Maverick. Now, they were supposed to be cheap, but as we can see with a lot of this pricing, they're not as cheap as they used to be promoted to be. I mean, here we have a little Tremor, and I've talked about this one before, but here we have pricing of $50,000. While Ford's trying to sell vehicles that are cost effective for a lot of buyers, the fact remains is a lot of buyers simply can't afford the stretch. Even for a lower cost entry-level vehicle like the Mavericks or even the Escapes are now getting to a point where they're getting almost a little too expensive for your middle class worker. They're trying to get ahead of the game and do something that a lot of the other manufacturers aren't necessarily doing right now. They're trying to cut people a break. That's right, have you heard the latest that for the next 2 months, from April to the beginning of June, they're offering up below invoice, that's right, employee pricing for anybody who wants certain vehicles. But there's a caveat, it's not every vehicle. The new Ford Expedition is exempt, as it's just a new model. They don't want to put that out there for some of these discounts, as well as some of the big Super Duty trucks. Now, these are big work trucks, and they know that a lot of people are going to buy these anyway. They need them to tow, haul, and these aren't something that the regular garden variety consumer are typically buying, so they're not worried about trying to promote these. And as such, they're not, because these ones here are exempt from that discount. Let's take a look over here at this and have a peek at this beautiful Super Duty. Big, bold grille. Look at this. I love that. Look, more chrome on here. How about those big mud terrain tires on there? This one here is a King Ranch. Love the King Ranch, and it's an F350. Big fold-away mirrors. Of course, we got the shiny finish in there, and I love the King Ranch because the styling you get, of course, you get those gorgeous seats, and the interior is absolutely beautifully finished in these trucks. Totally a dream vehicle. But I wish they would discount these, because to me this is one of the nicest vehicles that Ford has to offer. This one here is a Tremor King Ranch. As we cycle around, we see all this beautiful chrome or detailing on the back. Look at that. That's a gorgeous piece. You do get a slider, as you should with a lot of these highly spec'd out vehicles. All kinds of painted finishing. How much is a King Ranch F350? Well, how about $129,000? Wow, that is on another level. And so if people are looking to go out there and take advantage of these employee pricing discounts, they're probably not going to enjoy it with a lot of these Super Duties, these big full-size HD trucks that Ford sells. A lot of these are still built in the US, but the engines are manufactured in Mexico. And even these ones here, gorgeous Raptor Bronco. I love these trucks, but they have been sitting around, and a lot of these full-size Broncos have not been selling all that well. So herein lies Ford's opportunity to try to stand heads above the rest, to try to sell all other products that weren't selling. Seems like an opportunity. First, promote themselves as being the fun brand. Second, try to do something that none of the other brands like Stellantis and Ram and Chevy and GM aren't doing, and that's promoting some of their products. But this one here is also not going to be discounted. They're saying the Raptor, beautiful truck. I mean, look at I love those military types wheels, painted flares on this. How about that little flare right here? And of course, Raptor badging all the way around. What a gorgeous vehicle. Big fold-away mirrors. Look at the way this is finished up here. But it also has a cost presence too, because this vehicle here is listed at $124,000. So it's very unfortunate, because at $124,000 it'd be great to get at, 7, 8, 10% off of that sticker price. Maybe get it closer to $105,000, $110,000. That might be a price point that was absolutely appetizing for a lot of buyers, but instead these Ford Bronco Raptors are sadly not part of that big discount, the employee discount, that where a lot of people are going to be exposed to for the next couple months. So apparently with about 80% of the Ford vehicles being available to pick up this discount, it definitely begs the question, is this the right time to buy? I mean, many people often ask before that April 2nd date, was that the right time to buy it? Hurry up and rush. Ultimately, it comes down to affordability and whether you can afford it. I mean, during a cost of living crisis, we know it's so expensive to buy these vehicles these days. Any of them, even a heavily discounted vehicle that's going to get you 10% off, is 10% off to get you down around invoice. Is that enough to get people to go out and buy? I don't know. But Farley's trying to make a move, and clearly is one of the more vocal CEOs who's actually commented as well that some of these new taxes will likely absolutely blow a hole in the car industry. Some experts feel that there's a little bit of posturing going on by the big three, of course, with the chicken tax that has protected the big three for years to keep a lot of the foreign vehicles out, to keep some of the competition out and keep the big three together. And with the limited competition that Ford and GM and Ram have enjoyed for years, they've clearly been able to control the costs. Now that the art market seems to be opening up a little bit, now that tariffs are hitting, and as well some of the foreign markets are getting involved, it feels like that market is starting to blow open, and there will be maybe a little more free competition. The real question is, how sustainable is it for Ford to continue on with some of these price cuts and some of these discounts? Is that sustainable when ultimately Ford is already dealing with some of the major recalls and some of the warranty claims that the CEO has already claimed that has to be fixed? That's one of the major priorities for Ford, is to fix some of the big recalls. Recalls or no recalls, clearly Ford is on target for trying to produce vehicles that are more attainable. We're seeing these smaller price point vehicles like the Maverick, which is intended directly for a consumer that doesn't necessarily have the funds. Targeted for people that don't want to spend all their hard-earned dollars on a vehicle when they just need to get from A to B. Or for those buyers that just don't have the budget, this is the perfect place to start. And a lot of the other OEMs and a lot of the other manufacturers have forgotten that fact, that during the cost of living crisis, that people just don't have the money. People are stretched to the point where they just can't pay for a new vehicle anymore. And freshly released used car buyer's guide, I wrote it word for word myself. Check it out in the link below. But when we're starting to see numbers up close to 20% of the average car loan today that goes out is over $1,000 a month, and we're seeing a lot of people paying $1,500, $2,000 a month for their new full-size trucks or large SUVs. it clearly begs the question, where are people coming up with this money and how do they make it happen? You know, signs of some of the most broke people out there are the ones with the big house, 2 brand new SUVs on the driveway, a new car, and as well as a shiny new boat on the driveway. That's usually a sign of people that are getting in over their head. And there's many people that would love to buy one of these instead, because obviously you're gonna be a little bit lower cost. You're dealing with an F-150 that's an XL, so it's gonna be a low trim. There's gonna be a lot of basic trim features. You get steel wheels on here, plastic. Everywhere there's lots of plastic, it's a great affordable vehicle. You don't get the no frills. There's no slider, there's no spray and liner. It does give you 4-wheel drive, which makes it practical for conditions where you have snow and ice, so it's at least practical in that sense. But a very basic truck like this is realistically all a lot of people even want or care about. It's truly hard to find a lot of these. But then look at the quality, the fit and finish. I mean, what do we have here? And why is this door not fitting right? Look at that. That is another indication, I hate to say it, to some of the quality challenges that they're seeing in these vehicles. It's a very low cost, entry level, low trim vehicle, which were very, very hard to find back in, 21, 22, but now they're starting to show up. And these are the vehicles that a lot of people are starting to look at. It would be a nice gesture to see another $5,000 or $10,000 off the price of these vehicles. Now, I know a lot of you out there, and we talk about this all the time. I mean, where have these prices gone? Where has time gone? If you could spin back the hands of time, wouldn't it be nice to get this truck here instead for $30,000, $35,000, where many people truly believe it's priced and deserves to be priced at? The unfortunate part is greed takes over, and a lot of these manufacturers, doesn't matter if it's Ford, Ram, of course Chevy, they've all been working together, and because of this chicken tax, they've been relatively protected. But now Ford, Toyota's in the game too, and they're all selling these highly priced trucks, and it's high trim levels are the priority.
So with some of this amazing pricing, are you inclined to buy a new Ford vehicle here within the next couple of months? Well, either way, I'd love to hear your comments down below. On top of it as well, I've just released an amazing ebook.
Used Car Buyer's Guide, I wrote it word for word myself. Check it out in the link below.
The second story, why rich people are buying older used vehicles and poor people just aren't. There's a clear indication as to what's going on. The cost of vehicles is going and rising through the roof. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Why rich people drive cheap vehicles and poor people drive expensive luxury vehicles. Most of my life, I've driven older, cheap vehicles. I almost never bought anything new. Up until recently, I've always driven older vehicles. Like this old Ram, this 2003 Ram, I picked this up for a few $1,000s, bought it off the first owner, and have been driving it ever since. I've always driven older Chevy trucks, older cars, beaters, vehicles, manual gearboxes, something cheap and easy to own. And it's allowed me to do other things, travel, spend money in places I want to do. And driving expensive luxury cars gives everybody else a perception that you have money, wealth, smarts, and that you have all kinds of cash to blow on expensive vehicles like this Porsche. One of the best reasons why it saves me money and saves me a lot of stress and anguish driving some of these old vehicles like this Ram. Look, you could park it just about anywhere and you're not going to damage the vehicle. That's not going to send all kinds of dollars out of your bank account trying to fix scratched fenders and all kinds of dents and bumps because if you parked it so close at a mall. You didn't have to worry about parking it next to somebody at a mall. You just park it wherever you want. And you can also park it on rough terrain and not worry about ripping off spoilers, ripping off expensive body parts, as opposed to vehicles like this where you have to be very cautious where you park it. The ride height is very, very low, and chances are, unless you're driving it on perfectly groomed asphalt or concrete, you're probably going to rip that spoiler off. That's going to cost you money. You're going to damage lower body parts. That's probably going to come off. And even these wheels are lower profile. Your chances are you're going to dent a rim or bend a rim or cause other kind of damage because of low profile tires. And it always costs you a lot more money, whether it's body damage, wheel damage, just because you own these vehicles. So that's money out of the pocket. Another reason why rich people have cheap vehicles is because they don't spend money on crazy repairs. We flip this up, and when you have to repair something, replace something, these cheaper vehicles often, sometimes you can even skip some of the parts and pieces. But when something dents or bangs or breaks, sometimes you don't even need to fix it. But even if something goes, like an alternator or power steering pump, or even coolant reservoir, or any of these parts, quite often they're easy to access, easy to get at. A lot of do-it-yourselfers can fix a lot of these parts, and the parts are generally a lot cheaper. But when you drive an expensive vehicle like this, you're poor because you're giving all your money away to the service shops. The shops that do the work, the mechanics, are the people making the real money when you're driving these luxury vehicles. Because you look under the hood of some of these modern day luxury performance cars and you wonder, how on earth can you fix anything in here? Look, how do you access any of those parts, the intake plenums, all of the accessories and parts and pieces? Try to change an alternator, you have to take half the engine apart. So that's going to cost you $100, $200, $300 an hour to get this vehicle serviced, and that strictly is going to drain your wallet of all of the money that you've earned so hard to keep and make. Right there. Another benefit with buying an old car or truck, like I've always done, is you're out of the depreciation. You're at the bottom of the curve. As a matter of fact, you get an older vehicle like this, there's a good chance that you could probably sell it for even more than you paid for it. You buy this vehicle when it's 10, 15, 20 years old. If it's running well and you keep it going and do whatever you need to, use it hard, put it away wet, you're probably still going to turn around and sell it after 5 years if you want to, and possibly even make money once you sell this vehicle. Brand new cars like this end up costing you depreciation. You buy it brand new, like they say, 20% of the value gone in the first few years. But more importantly, when you buy luxury vehicles, now Porsche is a little bit of an exception, but a lot of vehicles, whether you're BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Jaguar, you can often lose as much as 40 or 50% in 4 or 5 years. As a matter of fact, there's some brands like Maserati, you can lose even more. In 3-4 years, you can lose 70, almost 80% of their original value. That's where all your money went. Depreciation, it's all vaporized. The value wasn't there in the first place, and now you gave it all away. Another beauty why rich people often drive older vehicles is because they didn't tie up all that money in their brand new vehicles. That's a depreciating asset. Rather, they're putting that money into resources that can possibly generate more revenue. In other words, investments, maybe some rare car that actually goes up in value, real estate, things that actually can make them more money. But instead, tying up money in luxury vehicles often does just that. It ties up your money. You're spending $100,000, $150,000, maybe $200,000 on a brand new luxury vehicle, and you watch its value month over month, year over year go down. And unfortunately, you no longer have that capital to generate more money. That's why the rich know how to make money and the poor know how to spend it. The beauty of having an older vehicle is you don't care. You can haul all kinds of junk around and not worry too much about it. And ultimately, you can throw any in there and not have to rent a rental vehicle or a rental truck to do a lot of your day-to-day chores. You need to change apartments, you need to do some moving or hauling. You can do that in your old beater, and it doesn't cost you any money for moving services or rental of trailers or towing vehicles. But when you have a very nice vehicle like this, the last thing you want to do is haul anything around. You have no room in the trunk. In here, you don't want to haul anything because you might ruin the fancy carpet or scratch the leather interior. So anytime you drive these kind of cars, they're extremely impractical, and you end up spending more money along the way to rent a truck, to rent a tow haul vehicle, or even to pay a buddy to come move that fridge for you. So it's going to cost you more money to own these vehicles just because of the inconvenience factor. But ultimately, rich people buy cheap vehicles because it allows them to do what they want. They can retire early. They can buy that property on the beach in Southern California. And instead of buying 10 vehicles in your lifetime at $40,000 a piece and spending all of that money, they can buy their special dream car.
Don't get me wrong, we all know life's too short to drive boring cars, and as a result, it's important to have some fun along the way. Generally speaking, yes, while many rich people do in fact have expensive cars, the point is their daily car is usually something a little simpler and lower cost. That's the point of the video. It's really not about don't have fun. We all know that we've got to have fun. We only live once, and clearly having fun cars around, if you're a true car enthusiast, makes a lot of sense. The third story, these new tariffs are having a huge impact on the car market industry as a whole. Now, we're not here to talk politics. Leave that out of it. This is strictly talking about how it's affecting cars and vehicles that we buy every single day.
A lot of these dealers are trying to predict and get ahead of the program with the tariffs about to hit on April 3rd. A lot of car buyers, a lot of customers, and of course, a lot of dealerships are starting to panic. They don't know what to expect. The first wave of tariffs looks to be hitting any vehicle that's imported into the United States that are built and manufactured in other countries. Even Europe is about to hit with this, as well as a lot of Asian vehicles are all about to see some of these tariffs applied to their vehicles, which is effectively going to dump their competitiveness. Here's a brand new Ford just off the truck, 4x4. This one here is an XLT F-150. Beautiful truck. Yeah, you've got the big displays in there. You've got leather interior. I don't know if it has sunroof, but it is an XLT, and we look at a few options here. It's not a highly spec truck per se, but it does come at $72,540. Now, while many are saying these vehicles are built in the US, the F-Series trucks, that's largely true, but in many cases, parts are coming from other countries. In a lot of cases, the full-size diesel trucks, the 6.7s Power Strokes, are built in Mexico. So if it's not the full-size vehicle, if it's not the entire vehicle, a lot of these vehicles will have parts and components that may see heavy taxes, which of course adds price to the bottom line. Dealers are calling for more vehicles and more inventory to hopefully get them off the bus. There is that transport time, and if you have the vehicle on the lot, then of course that's likely to be subjected to the original pricing. Now you'll see a lot of Escapes loading up. There's lots of trucks, full-size F350s, F250s loading up. There's lots of full-size trucks. We've got Harley Davidson editions. We've got Super Duties. Here's an F350. Here's another Harley Davidson. So there's a lot of this big metal that's just not moving. Lots of F-Series 150s, F-150s. We got STX, XLTs. Hey, there's even Lightnings, and we know the Lightnings have been pushed really hard with incentives, of course, but you get all kinds of inventory filling up the lots. And these vehicles just keep going on and on and on. And vehicles like the Mavericks, they were highly sought after. You couldn't find any of these for a short time back, but now they're all over the place. But that's not because they're not selling. I mean, Mavericks are still selling. A lot of people are still looking for affordable vehicles, and this is one of the lowest cost vehicles Ford makes. The point is, a lot of these vehicles are getting pushed. A lot of these dealers are calling for more inventory so that they can be prepared for what comes next on April 3rd. Here's another one, an F-150 we have, a Lariat. It's a beautiful truck. You got painted mirrors, beautiful rims. Of course, you do have the step guard there, and you have a significant price tag with a big pile of options. And this one here is going for $94,430. Of course, out the door, you're over 100 grand for this beautiful little F-150 Lariat. But realistically, it's not just Ford. Stellantis with their Chrysler minivan built in Canada. These full-size diesel trucks have engines built in Mexico. And with many car makers, it doesn't matter whether it's Ford, General Motors, of course, who's leading the charge for full-size truck sales here this last quarter again, year over year. That could possibly change because any one vehicle here is manufactured out of 100% American hands. Sure, while the vehicle might be manufactured down in the US, there's parts that come from Canada, from Mexico, maybe even in Europe. There's parts that are coming from all sorts of areas. Initial projections indicate that your average vehicle may go up at $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 right off the top. It's not going to likely be a full 25% because a lot of these vehicles are built in some component in the US already. There's one thing that's for sure, is a lot of these big OEMs, whether it's Stellantis, General Motors, Ford, they're not going to go down kicking and screaming. They're certainly already been looking at potentially greasing pockets of those that can make some big decisions. And of course, that's going to help the brands. The conversation was also opened up to brands like Mercedes, Volkswagen, BMW. Now, BMW does produce some vehicles on North American soil. So does Mercedes-Benz. And a lot of those brands that are currently generating and building their vehicles on US soil really shouldn't see a huge impact. But a lot of them are being shipped directly from Europe. For example, Ferrari, the latest is they were interviewed and said that they're likely going to apply 10%, that Ferrari's likely to transfer that 10% across the board for some of their specialty models, to try to recuperate that 25% tariff. So likely not a lot of people are going to say, let's ante up and help those Ferrari buyers out and give them an extra 100 grand with a Fund Me page. No, that's likely not going to happen. Most people are with that sort of resources just going to pay the piper. But it's really more than that. It's the entire industry that we're going to see this impact. And it doesn't matter what make, model, type of brand, it's all likely going to see increases. But it's more than also just what we're seeing on the new car prices, because smaller vehicles like this may only see $1,000, maybe $2,000 increase, if it's even applicable. In many cases, it may not even apply. But where prices go up on brand new vehicles, it's going to impact the used car market, unfortunately, as well. So a lot of people feel that, you know what, I can skate around this and avoid this entirely. But we already know that the used car market is very strong right now. Inventory numbers are very low. We've seen this. Auctions don't have a lot of inventory to push through, and there aren't a lot of extra inventory on car lot on the used car sector, at least late model quality products. So the few that you do see sitting around are likely going to go up in value too. Because if people are going to see, look, I need to pay an extra $8,000 or $10,000 on my brand new vehicle like this, well, I'm going to go to used. So that's going to push the pressure up on a lot of these late model used vehicles.
So yes, unfortunately, it's not just new cars that are being traded across country lines, it's used cars, because it's going to push those prices up, and even the parts that we're buying to maintain our older cars are about to see major price increases as well. The fourth story, Toyota has a huge announcement.
I mean, with great products like this, they're selling extremely well. What they're showing now are vehicles like this, even SUVs. People still come to Toyota with the trusted reliability, even though there have been some reliability challenges. The Tundras and of course their new 3.4 liter V6 have had some issues with main bearings, as well as the Tacoma and their 8-speed automatic transmission have shown to have a few issues. That doesn't stop buyers from buying these vehicles. The trust is still there. See, part of the issue is we have a few little Land Cruisers parked up front. There's a gray, this black one, another black one. Over here, we have this cute blue color over here, and we have another gray vehicle right here. Because part of the issue here is, unfortunately, that's all they have for new vehicles. Over here, we have a lot that's virtually empty. And when you look down at the other end, what those are just basically the used vehicles on the lots, things that were traded in, coming from auction, and that's the plethora of the vehicles that they're selling. A lot of these vehicles here even have tags on them because they're sold already, but this is all they have for new. Toyota has been selling cars. They've had no issues selling cars until now. Something drastic has changed. A lot of these vehicles are very, very popular. In 2024, 2025, they've actually seen a 7.7% increase in sales overall in the month of March compared to the year before, and about a 1% increase in total sales in 2025 in the first quarter. Things are looking up. And while 2024 was a bit of a recovery year for a lot of manufacturers, not every brand was doing well. Stellantis absolutely in the tank, and they continue to see sales drop. Ford has had some marginal sales increases. A lot of it had to do with heavy incentives. But Honda even selling vehicles, and even more specifically, Toyota has absolutely had a breakthrough year, with RAV4 leading the sales of 115,000 units. We also see the Camry is one of the best sellers at 70,000 units, the Tacoma at about 59,000, and as well as the Toyota Corolla has also seen some of the leading sales at 55,000 sales. But unfortunately, the Corolla is down. It's an aging platform. People are getting a little bit bored with this vehicle. The Corolla, it's beautiful. They make the GR Corolla. It's a hot little hatch. It's a fun car, and it's very reliable. But the sales are down. People are starting to look more for SUVs, more practical vehicles. And Toyota has new vehicles on the horizon, so people are starting to make a shift. And popular vehicles like this, obviously with a lot of Toyotas now producing more hybrid vehicles, the struggles were real. In January and February of 2025, global sales were of 1.54 million units and up about 2.9% overall in the overall global market. But unfortunately, because of supply chain restrictions and the lack of products to go into a lot of the hybrid vehicles, Toyota has struggled, and they've seen a 6.5% decline in sales in North America overall. And so while most would say that's a good problem to have, a lot of customers are buying their new Toyotas, especially particularly ones that are of the hybrid drivetrains, which are becoming ever increasing in popularity. Just like a lot of these vehicles, we're seeing a Crown that's a plug-in hybrid all-wheel drive vehicle. This is one of the popular, more luxurious vehicles in their arsenal. Very luxurious, very stylish, quite interesting, no doubt about it. But sadly, a lot of these vehicles are hard to get a hold of, and customers are having to wait as long as 8-9 months. We heard about this was going on a couple of years ago when during the supply chain shortages. Well, guess what? This is happening again. Seems to be a good problem to have. A lot of issues that Stellantis isn't dealing with, but regardless, that can push a lot of customers out the door looking for other products if they know that they have to wait 6 months to a year for their new vehicle. And with the delivery on time method that Toyota has been exercising in the last couple of years, they've realized that having less inventory on the lot usually means that there's more of a buzz and less of an opportunity to negotiate. Less people are trying to get prices knocked off of MSRP, and Toyota was one of the worst brands for trying to get discounts. There were no discounts. Here, like this plug-in hybrid vehicle on the RAV4 is one of those examples of one of the popular vehicles very hard to get these days. Even the Tundra over there, even with all of the engine issues that they've been seeing, they're still one of the more popular vehicles. People are buying them. Tacoma even more so. And even the latest 4Runner isn't quite as popular as the outgoing with the V6, this newest version here with the turbocharged 2.4 liter 4-cylinder. Time will tell how reliable it's being. but it seems so far that Tacoma, which features the same engine in it, is also relatively durable. So far, it's basically the 8-speed automatic transmission that the Tacoma's had struggles with, so it shouldn't be a too much concern for customers looking to buy a new 4Runner. These are absolutely gorgeous vehicles, and of course they have a lot of new style. They definitely a lot more aggressive. This new 4Runner is wonderful. Look, I mean, they've got this gorgeous flares. The front end looks very similar as the outgoing model, but the hood lines are a lot beefier. The tires have some nice updates, lots of nice updates there, foldaways. And of course you get the big step guards, but what's really attractive is the way they flare these vehicles out at the back. This one's a TRD off-road. It's an absolute gorgeous vehicle all the way around. You'll notice some new script for the back. Absolutely wonderful looking truck all the way around. So they definitely hit it out of the park on the styling department. Time will tell on the reliability of the new 4Runner. But Toyotas have been gaining popularity. People trust the brand, and they're still selling vehicles. If you were to tell a Stellantis customer you have to wait 9 months to get your middle-of-the-road Dodge product, they'd probably say, I'll go somewhere else. But Toyota owners are willing to wait. But individual franchise Toyota dealers have had success in other ways. You get a hybrid RAV4 and all kinds of non-hybrid vehicles, all kinds of makes and models of the brand. And ultimately, as long as they have used vehicles on the lot, they're charging as much for a 1 or 2 year old late model used vehicle with low mileage as you can get for a brand new vehicle. That's why they're not panicking at the dealer level. So even with some of the quality issues that Toyota's had with the Tundra and the V6, of course the 8-speed auto in the Tacoma, a few programming glitches, ultimately the brand is still trusted, and vehicles like this will likely continue to sell. Not something that every manufacturer can brag about. General Motors has also had a very good year, as has a few other brands, but marginally when you talk about manufacturers like Stellantis, even BMWs, Audis, a lot of the European imports are not selling very well. The VAG group are not selling vehicles particularly well. And a lot of that had to do with fast tracking to electrification. A lot of it had to do with turbocharging small 4-cylinder engines when customers wanted V8s, but Lexus and Toyota have kept things very simple and reliable.
That's right, even with some of the quality issues, they've had those blown engines in the GR86, the blown engines in the new Tundras. They've had their share of issues, programming problems, inconsistencies in quality. The fact remains is a lot of customers are still not giving up on the brand, and it shows. Sales are up. Toyota's doing well. The fifth story is about car buyers and the experience they have when they go into the dealership. It's no wonder people get anxious. It's no wonder people hate dealing on their next new vehicle. I'm going to share that whole story with you now. I've actually polled 125 people who shared some of their experiences in buying cars and the facts of 5 of the key things why people actually hate buying cars, why they hate dealing with dealerships, and why in fact it's one of the most stressful times. The first thing is deceptive advertising. I mean, some know that bait and switch is pretty much illegal, but they're still riding the line where they advertise they've got this product. You see it online, you see it on their website, or in some cases, you know, the old newspaper. I mean, we used to see it in print as well. And then you go down and see the vehicle and they don't have it, or it was just sold. And that's the old bait and switch. But quite often, even if you do find that vehicle, and it might be advertised at a price, say $39,995, but it's all of this fine print, all of this plus this at OAC and based on this financing, based on approval of this, there's all these factors they like to bury in the fine print. And the problem is whether it's factual or not. Legally, in most cases now, dealers are smart enough to know, and OEMs are smart enough to know that they can't do too many of these shady little maneuvers. But the problem is a lot of buyers don't necessarily know that. And without digging deep into the fine print, a lot of people just feel that they're snookered. They're just given information that feels false. It doesn't feel like it's up close and absolutely truthful. Whether it is all there in fine print, it could in fact be. But most people that I've polled and talked to said they just hate that whole idea of, you know, an advertised price and realizing that $39,995 ends up looking more like $43,000 or $45,000 by the time you're out the door. So that's why when I talk about these numbers, it's always good to pick up the phone, talk to a dealer, specifically talk to a salesperson, and don't even muss about. Say, look, I saw this red Ram truck online. It's it's this model. It's got this trim level. I noticed you've advertised at this. Always ask for out the door. You don't want extras. Just tell them basically straight up, how much is this vehicle actually going to cost me with all the taxes, fee, registration, as is out the door. I don't want to know about all this extra levies and fees and, PD, the delivery charges and all of those other factors. I don't care. What's the out of door price? It feels so shady, and most people that I spoke to just feel like it's just not transparent. And a lot of people feel like the dealers and the OEMs are trying to pull a fast one. So that's one of the main things that causes a lot of stress, is just having to sift through all the noise and the false numbers and the fakes and trying to figure out for yourself how much it's truly going to cost you. Oh, and by the way, if you want some merch, EXoticcar Playplace, my other channel where I really dive into all the reliability challenges, good, bad, and ugly of the quality and reliability and durability of vehicles. Head on over there. I'll share the link down in the description. If you want some, fourth wall page, it'll take you right to it. You're definitely going to love it. So anyway, if you want your own hats, shirts, and so on. But the next one is being harassed when you get out of your vehicle. Have you ever never driven through a car lot and you're just browsing? Maybe it's a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, and you're starting to get into the market thinking about some new cars. You might be thinking about this new SUV, or maybe you've got a few in mind. You and your spouse decide to spend a day, an afternoon of just driving around and more kicking tires, window shopping to start with. You read about it in the magazines, but you want to see them in flesh, right? So you get in your car and you go drive around. Quite often, a lot of what people are commenting is a lot of these dealers, and that's specific to that specific dealership. And I found personally some of the worst, I'll just call it out. But some of the worst dealers that I've personally seen are some of the Stellantis dealers. You go drive through a Dodge dealership and they are on you like crap, like white on rice. They're literally ready to jump on you as soon as you step 1 foot outside of your vehicle. And that's one of the other aspects of what a lot of people hate about car shopping, is just that intensity, that anxiety when you drive into a car lot just to look. You just want to step out of your vehicle, go look at the Monroney sticker or the window sticker and just see some of the details, or you want to peek inside the window and see what the interior looks like of this car. And no longer do you do that, and all of a sudden there's a salesperson right behind you. Now, I understand, like a lot of people, there are people that prefer to be catered on, and there's a lot of people that like to have that person, that salesperson available like that. But most people that I speak to would much rather go look for the salesperson when they're ready to shop, i.e. they're inside, you walk in, you decide you want to take something for a test drive or have a closer look. You know where they'll find them. They'll be inside the dealership, or they might be out just in front of the front doors. But the idea of having a salesperson rush right out to you, barely put your car in park, and they're right in front of you. And it's that stress, that pressure that just puts people off. And quite frankly, that's one of the biggest pet peeves from a lot of car buyers, and why they hate buying their new car, is just dealing with all of that extra anxiety. The third one is a lot of these games that are played. A lot of these dealers and salespeople that have been doing it for a while like to play games. Some will come out and say, hey, I'm not here to play any games. I just want to be right, be totally honest. And quite often, my personal experience, those that actually advertise that on the front end are usually those that usually have an agenda. So the games that a lot of people don't like to play. The salesperson will ask you, hey, what kind of car are you interested in? What are you thinking? Looking for an SUV, a car, a truck? What's your thoughts? And then as soon as you say whatever it is, say you go into a dealership and you say, hey, here's a Toyota. There's this Highlander. Oh, all of a sudden, the next thing out of the mouth of the salesperson is, yeah, those are absolutely the amazing vehicles. Hard to come by though. We can't keep them on the lot, or there are not too many around because they're very highly sought after. So they start setting the stage so that once you rebut and you say, look, and you get to the point where you're actually negotiating, that you have no negotiations, because they've already set the stage by saying that vehicle's rare, special, exciting, interesting, and very desirable. In most cases, you're just looking at another vehicle. They probably made 5 million of those, through the course of its production run. But yet that dealer person will often say, wow, that's a great choice. I was thinking of buying one of those myself, or my brother-in-law just bought one and he loves it. There's all those millions of stories, how they just fib. They blow smoke up your butt just for the sake of trying to make a sale, but not just making a sale, but also prevent you from feeling like there's some space, because it's hard to come by. They're rare. I had the same experience with a Toyota 4Runner recently, where I went into the Toyota dealer and I said how much of that, the older outgoing model, and he was blowing all kinds of smoke telling me you couldn't find them. We're charging over a sticker because they're rare and you can't see them anywhere. I had the same situation with a Honda Pilot. It was a Honda Pilot, for crying out loud. And as soon as I walked in there, I started sniffing around. I jumped in the showroom. I was looking around, trying some things. Salesperson came and gave me the same song and dance. Well, they're rare. There's none around. And that's why they're charging so much money for these vehicles. It's absolutely flabbergasting. And buyers can see through all of that noise and nonsense. People get annoyed by it. And so that's one of the biggest pet peeves people have is these car dealers that are just not transparent. They're just fake, truly fake. And they're going to say whatever you need to hear to both leverage their negotiations and also try to push you into something that maybe you're just on the fence of anyway. The fourth thing that's very annoying by a lot of car buyers are dealers and even more importantly, the salespeople. And it's usually followed up by a sales manager because I've personally experienced that as well. But unfortunately for them, I've got the experience. I understand where they're coming from and I know how to blast them out of the water. But it's those hounding phone calls, texts, emails, time and time and time again. See, one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people do is, hey, just give me your number. What's your email address? I won't bother you. We won't bother you with rhetoric and noise. We'll just get a hold of you. It's just for our records. If we need to come up with some special, we have something that I can offer you. But we don't bother people. We don't bother customers. Well, that's a lie because time and time again, I've found that as soon as you share your phone number, your email address, you will be hounded. And quite often you'll be texted time and time and time again. And nobody wants to be bothered with that. It's noise. Sure, you can say, no, stop, don't bother me anymore. But a lot of people aren't as abrupt. I'm a little abrasive. I'm a little in your face and I'm a little annoying on a good day. If I'm being honest, actually, that's what the wife says all the time. But nonetheless, not everybody knows how to push back. Not everybody tells them, hey, punch the brakes on that. Some people are just a little shy. Some people are a little put off and they don't know how to tell people to get lost. But ultimately, by you're sharing some of your personal information, now you're putting your name out there. You're putting your name out to this whole registry of dealerships because a lot of these dealerships, you look at, say, a Go Auto or a Yakima Group and locally here, for example, some of these dealership networks have multitude of different dealerships. And it doesn't matter, it could be this dealer or that dealer brand, and any one of these dealership brands has a potential for getting your information. Once it's shared with one salesperson, there's a good possibility that they could share it amongst many. And a lot of these dealers, they just don't know how to say no. You say no to the salesperson, next thing the sales manager is calling you. And it's so annoying, so obnoxious, and again, for a lot of people, stressful because you don't know how to make people disappear or go away. But a lot of people just are scared to say that. And that's one of the biggest pet peeves that a lot of people have is, having these hounding dealers, hounding salespeople, hounding sales managers constantly bothering you about trying to pitch their car, trying to sell you on a car. Are you done yet? Are you ready to buy yet? What do you think? Hey, what if I give you this deal? Oh, by the way, we can do an evaluation on your trade-in too, and we'll give you top dollar. All those facts are usually a lot of noise just to get you into the dealership. So that's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors, but a lot of people just don't know how to say no, and it bothers them to the core. Another one of the major facts why people absolutely hate and despise car shopping and car dealers comes down to all of that negotiations on the back end, back and forth, playing games. My manager says this, he can do this, can you not give us an extra $1,000? And all of these games that go back and forth, the negotiations is a pain, and a lot of people absolutely feel stressed out about it. On top of it, there's the other aspect as you transition in to the finance office. That's the other part that a lot of people really can't stand, because now all of a sudden you have another person most often trying to sell you on paint protection film, key fob replacement, obviously scratch and dents, rim protection packages, undercoating, gap insurance. I mean, the list goes on and all the things they try to sell you on, extended warranties. But it's hard to say no, isn't it? Do you find that? I find that quite often hard to say no. You walk through the mall and there's somebody like trying to give you free samples of a little free perfume or some kind of spray or a little sample or a little widget. And they're like, hey, just try it. It's free, no problem. It's hard to say no, right? But that's where they catch you. Hook, line, and sinker is they come in soft, but at the end of the day, a lot of people don't like that and it stresses them out because they think that there's always something waiting, and 9 times out of 10, there's an agenda to try to grab an extra few bucks out of your pocket. So it's always stressful for people in the negotiations and then the finance office. When is it okay to say yes and when is it okay to say no? Always Always know what your out the door price is. Be happy with that so you know all taxes in and what you're getting, but also say no to all the extras, because the extras mean you're going to pay more for all these extra add-ons, sticker, paint protection film, key fob action, and all the gap insurance. Gap insurance also, by the way, check with your local insurance company. Chances are you'll get a much better deal through them than you will at the car dealership. What about you? I know for me, I just know how to read between the lines. I know the games and the politics, so I can manage it. But how about yourself? Do you find yourself a little anxious, a little nervous? Is it one of those experiences that you'd rather not deal with at all? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. With all of that said, if you haven't already, my ebook that I just wrote about, the best buyer's guide, the most comprehensive guide to getting your next used car. Definitely want to click down on that. That's going to give you absolutely everything. I wrote it personally. You're going to love it. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.